just kind of start at the top, Naomi, if you would. Can you recall how you were feeling when you learned that David needed a home? Did you know from the start that you wanted to take him into your own home?
David had a really rocky childhood. So we knew that, I was always involved in his life and helping sort of parent him. And when he was first removed from the home, I actually tried to get custody, and I was in Alabama, and the interstate compact was denied. So 2 years later, when it became clear he had been in residential and they were going to pursue placing him in a family, and they brought up, are you interested, Naomi, in being a resource? There was no question. Like, I helped raise him from birth with my sister and was completely attached to him. And he felt like partly mine, partly my sister's. And I just couldn't imagine strangers taking him in. It was just, the responsibility was there because he's family, but also just this love, like he belongs to us. So it was like, no question. I knew I would move. I would do whatever I had to do to keep this child with me.
And you talked some about how you've moved around a little bit. Can you talk a little, please, about how you came to know UMFS and Kinship Care through UMFS as an organization?
Yeah, so I had David with me 4 years when I lived in Maryland, and then he needed a higher level of care, and it was unclear how long that would be. In the meantime, I moved to Virginia and met and married my husband, Chris. And so, probably a year into our marriage, David was doing really well, and he was ready to transition back into a family setting. And so at that time, because I had worked with therapeutic foster agencies before, I just started Googling therapeutic foster agencies. I didn't even wait for DSS to get involved or the Interstate Compact. I was going to find the best. I want to work with the best. I want to know who I'm working with and what they stand for. And so I found a couple of different agencies and contacted one, and they said, "What is an Interstate Compact?" And I don't think you have the right organization. I think you just need to wait till DSS gets involved. I don't know that you know what you're talking about. And then I called UMFS and spoke with Leslie Perez. Actually, Chris found UMFS online. So I have to give him credit. He was helping me. And I was actually pretty convinced this other agency was the one I wanted to go with because I'd read all about them. And they totally turned me down.
But I emailed Leslie and she replied right away.
Right away.
It was really helpful.
Yeah, and so when we talked to her, she said, "I don't know if we're what you're looking for, but I'm going to find out and I'll get back to you." And to me, that was that's the best thing an agency can be, is you have a need. You guys are trying to help a kid. I don't know if we're the right fit, but I'm going to find out. And that, the heart, I remember getting off the phone, talking with her and talking to Chris and just saying, her energy, her, it was so clear that UMFS was passionate about what they were doing, and their ultimate goal was to serve families and kids. And if the answer wasn't there, the answer was going to be found.
Yeah, it's obvious that people who work for different organizations work for that organization, obviously. But got the sense when we were talking to UMFS staff that they primarily worked for us. It wasn't that they worked for UMFS, but they were working for us, and that was really clear.
And for David, for the child.
Can you talk a little bit then about some of those specific resources and supports that are provided to your family through UMFS?
Number one, the training was excellent. The just really in-depth trauma, and I remember the problem solving, plan A, B, and C. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but that training was so powerful. The child wants A, you want B, and so you're working together to find what is a good fit. How do we make compromises? How do we problem solve and respect the dignity of this child? Because I know UMFS often works with older kids. And, you're not just bringing in a 2-year-old where you just tell them what the rules are of your household. So I felt really equipped in the training. And so that was really good. And then having someone the social worker come to our home once a week has been really powerful. That was different than my experience before when I had David. And then because of his needs, we are level 3, I think, with you guys. And so we get the 5 hours of the community support service in the home, which has been invaluable. I mean, having someone work with David to partner with us on teaching him some life skills out in the community, and sort of just being in our home and seeing how we interact as a family, seeing how David interacts with us, how he's different when he's out in public, and helping us problem solve and prioritize the things that we need to work on with him and to help us, become a family has been amazing.
I think one thing that was really helpful was that stands out to me was learning about adverse childhood experiences and just getting a lens through which to understand was really helpful, and having someone help us process together as a family, because since Naomi had David as a single mom foster parent for 4 years previously, she knew a lot of things that I didn't know. And UMS kind of helped us get on the same page and be united in a vision for where we were going.
And that leads sort of into the next question, talking about this journey, this process. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little more to the changes your family has seen. You've grown together. Speak about that and how the whole process has been.
Where we are today, with David in our home and foster parenting, and now pursuing permanent guardianship, is really kind of the culmination of a couple different streams coming together. Naomi shared about being part of David's life since he was born, and her own journey with her sister. And at the same time, I was on a separate journey. I was married for 17 years to my first wife, and she had breast cancer for the last 9 years of her life, and which eventually moved to her brain, and she was unable to walk, unable to drive. And so that was the journey that me and my 3 biological children were on for 9 years before meeting Naomi. And so there's that brokenness and there's that hardship and sadness in our story. And at the same time, Naomi and David were going through their own journey of brokenness, but also healing and restoration. And I think what's been really interesting and encouraging to see is the way that God was doing healing work in both of our separate streams, and then brought together 2 broken stories that were in the process of healing and restoration, but then used both of those streams to kind of commingle into a new stream of this blended family that have their own sadnesses. But God loves to take those broken things and patch them up together into something that's new and beautiful in a way that would have never been the same if it had not been through that process.
Yeah, we knew when we found out that David could come home that not only was there a major change with me coming into the family, but now there was going to be another major change with another sibling coming in. And so we pursued counseling. We found a good psychologist in town and did some family counseling around change and introduced the idea of David coming. And we also worked with the local foster care agency in Connecticut with just, having some family visits. We brought the whole family to see David several times. And so, everybody was kind of able to practice being a family, but then get some space. And we continued counseling after David got here for our kids so that they could have someone to process with a lot of the change. But I would say, as Chris shared very openly, we've been very open with our kids. And we've tried, I think UMFS reinforced the idea of being honest about our own emotions, our own stories, and just the effect that bringing a child into your home can have on you. And we were really transparent with the kids about that and giving them freedom to be transparent as well about their feelings. And so we tried to just make it really safe for everyone to talk about whatever they need to talk about. And I think that's been very helpful. It's safe to have hard feelings, and we can work through them together. We may not stay stuck in those hard feelings. And, we've even made it safe for David to talk about, I felt like I was moving into somebody else's family and didn't know if I fit or not. And so, we've worked with him in feeling welcomed and a part of the family. One of our counselors advised us to do a lot of like mixing one-on-one, two-on-one. Like we would do, Chris and our other son and David together go do something. They went to a car show. And, then maybe I would do something with David and our daughter Ginger, and we'd go do something with dogs. They both love dogs. And so we've just been very intentional about trying to help everyone blend. I don't know if that answers the question.
It absolutely does. It does. And it's nice to hear some of those specific takeaways about your process, and really appreciate you all being open with us and sharing that. It's just an amazing story, and I'm glad that those two streams were able to converge. Specifically about David and his experience then. So what do you believe the benefit has been for him to have this opportunity through kinship care versus traditional foster care?
I think David and I have such a sweet bond from the time he was a baby that he has felt, I think, that unconditional love that you feel in a family. No family is perfect at loving one another unconditionally, but there's that safety of like, I can be myself and you're still going to accept me. And so I think David has benefited extremely from knowing he belongs with me. Like it's just a given. He doesn't have to wonder if I want him. He doesn't have to wonder if when he blows up and has bad behaviors, if I'm going to be like, you know what, that's fine. You're going back. And he's got some severe needs. He's a really complicated kid and has needed a lot of supports. Chris and I were talking about, it's been hard for Chris to jump in without that natural bond. And if I was a regular foster parent and I had a kid that was super, super tough and it was having an impact on my kids or my family, I might not have the endurance to persevere through the challenges to then see the gold on the other side. A year after David now being with us, our oldest daughter, Lucy, she told me, she said, I'm so glad that David came to live with us. I'm such a better person now. He's taught me so much about patience. And, you worry, like the added stress that special needs can bring, or the added stress of behaviors. How's that going to impact the other 3 kids? And, they're each in their own time and in their own way expressing, I've learned something from David. He's changed me. And he's been able to express those things about them. Mm-hmm. He's learned from them. But a regular foster parenting situation where it's a stranger and the bond is not there, it'd be really hard to persevere through that and make it and have that permanency mindset where whatever challenge we face, we're going to face it and we're going to make it to the other side. There's just this level of commitment and safety.
And you spoke a little bit to it. If you can elaborate, what do you think David's experience may have been if he would have been in traditional foster care and not had an opportunity for a kinship relationship?
I definitely think that David, in a typical foster care situation, would have probably bounced around quite a bit. And I think he would have probably bounced back and forth to residential treatment and families quite quickly. And that sense of detachment that I already saw beginning in him. He did spend some time in residential treatment when he was first removed from the home. And I just saw him shut off from his emotions, shut off from a relationship. And that, like, even just a desire to be nurtured, he was just really hard. But all that kind of melted away quickly because we had an established bond. But I think if he had stayed in the system, he would have just shut down further and further and put on that tough guy persona and sabotaged attachment, sabotaged connection because of the fear of losing it.
Yeah.
And I've had workers that work with us say, kids with this background don't have this success rate, don't you? And they're like, it is clear that his attachment with you and the work that you guys have done has rescued this child, because he should not be doing this well. And that's like amazing. Go ahead.
And he does have a tendency, I think, to self-sabotage or to give up, kind of a black-white thinking, all or nothing thinking, that if you if I feel a sense of rejection in a small way, that means you're rejecting me completely, and I guess you don't want me then. Is a phrase that I've heard him say. If we say, if he feels excluded from a game, for example, he might say, well, I guess you don't want me then. Like, it's not just about the game, but it's that, therefore I don't feel like I belong. But the contrast was dramatic when I went for a walk with him, and he was driving his remote control car, and I told him that we were going to pursue permanency, and that that if this went through, he would never have to go back into residential, but he would be in our home permanently. And he was like, okay, sounds good. And it wasn't a very long conversation, but his behavior dramatically changed in the weeks following. He was just calmer. There was more of a settled sense. There was less of the kind of dramatic fluctuations in behavior or language. He just seemed to just rest.
David has a birthday coming up, right? He's going to be turning 18. Can you talk a little bit then? That's such a milestone. What are some of the next steps for you all as a family as his birthday is approaching?
We are pursuing adult guardianship, and we've processed with David, and he's said he wants that. I mean, we've talked a lot about, just because of the disability, and he'll be in school through 22. He qualifies for that with an IEP. So just as that safeguard, but we've talked a lot about how really nothing is going to change. We have another daughter who is just turned 18, and she's going off to college, but he has seen like nothing's really changed with Lucy. She still asks if she can go out with friends. She still helps around the house. So she's an adult, but she's also part of this family. And so there's certain things that she's stepping into as a young adult, but there's certain privileges that she gets as being part of our family. And David processed with one of his therapists a couple weeks ago. She said, so what's going to change when you turn 18? And he said, well, not much. Lucy turned 18 and not much changed with her. And so I actually see that as a benefit. We're working with him to transition to adult thinking and adult mindset and taking on responsibility. But we've also talked with him, you're still in school and you're a part of our family. And so, what does it look like to become an adult, but still choose to honor the values of a home? And, we don't just get to do whatever we want. I'm married. I don't get to do whatever I want. Chris has a job. He doesn't get to do whatever he wants.
If someone's watching this interview and they can take away only one thing, what would you want that takeaway for them to be, specific to the importance of kinship care?
I would say hard things are worth doing. Of course, this is hard. Of course, there are challenges. The situation that's in front of you as you're considering whether or not to bring a child into your home, that opportunity wouldn't be in front of you if hard things had not happened. And so stepping into that is going to be difficult. But if people weren't willing to do hard things, Hitler would be running Europe. And so sacrifice and setting aside our own agenda and preferences for the sake of another is not only worth doing, but human beings are worth doing that for. Human beings, precious children made in God's image, are worth our sacrificial investment. And I believe that when we do that, we are tapping into the heart of God, who is a sacrificial, other-centered person, and he will pour into us all that we need as we pour out. So hard things are worth doing.
Yeah. And I would say just that sense of belonging that we all have, anyone who's lost a parent or, lost parents with divorce or whatever, there's just this hole in us that wants to be connected to our own. We want to be able to call our mom. We want to be able to call our dad. And it's great when a healthy replacement can come in. But there's still a grief. And so kinship care in particular is just really precious. And I think it keeps the door open to whatever healing might look like. Every case is different. In our case, when I first took David when he was 10, I just knew I had to choose to not have a relationship that was in person with my sister for his sense of healing, so that he could feel safe. But I knew I could just see down the road, like one day David is going to be better. And one day he's going to want to know his mom. And one day I'm going to get to be sisters with her, and he's going to be a part of our life, and it's going to be good. And I hoped for that. And I think kinship care keeps the door open for that sense of belonging and restoration. And we are moving toward that next month. He's going to get to see her, and it's good. And they talk on the phone, and it doesn't threaten his desire to live with Chris and I. It's like he just gets to have us both. And so yeah, that was more than one takeaway.
That's great. It's great. And how often did you say he speaks with his biological mother?
Since it's summer right now, they're playing Minecraft together during her lunch break. And so sometimes it's like 3 or 4 times a week. Yeah. But he's not, he doesn't have any interest in really talking about like real conversations.
Right.
So they're on the phone together, and they're connected on Minecraft, and they're building a world together. But then before that, sometimes it was like once every 2 months, he'd be like, hey, can I call my mom? And he has asked her some really deep questions. In the very beginning, he wanted to know, why did you marry? And why did you stay with him? Why? And she gave him really simple but true answers, and that's all he needed. He was able to move on. So that was really amazing.
You guys are just so wonderful to share your story with us and tell us about this journey. It's an amazing one. And I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to share or add that I haven't asked.
I would say that one thing I didn't expect about bringing David into our home was how the impact would flow in both directions. I knew that I would be expending energy and time and prayer, and that it would be hard flowing from me to David. But I didn't know that I would learn so much about myself. Just an example, David has a large pass-fail button. So for him, things are pass-fail. You're not graded A, B, C, D. You either win or you lose. You're either a success or a failure. And so he can just quickly be derailed by being frustrated, being overwhelmed, and feeling like he's just a loser. And I discovered that pass-fail button was in my own heart as well. And I saw how easily I could, when I made a small mistake, assume that therefore that meant Naomi was rejecting me, or my boss at work was disappointed in me. And so I've learned a lot about my own emotional, mental, psychological makeup through the lens of my relationship with David. And that's been a real unexpected blessing.